God for those few selections this morning. We thank God for bringing us here on one of the most uncelebrated days throughout the whole year. Y'all know what that day is?
Father's Day.
Father's Day. Okay, I read a funny thing this morning that says that Father's Day is a day that the guy asked this little boy, what's the definition of Father's Day? And he said, it's a day like Mother's Day, but you spend less money. That was his definition of Father's Day. It's a day like Mother's Day, but you just spend less money. In other words, Daddy don't get all that Mama gonna get. But it's still a good day that we can celebrate fathers. Okay? Do you realize, brother, your father was in your life or out your life, no matter his good, his bad, his negatives, his ups, his downs, you are who you are because of some of the blood that's in your vein from him. Okay? The negatives, the goods, the bads, I don't care who you are, nobody is all the way negative all the time. The worst person you can think of got some good in them. Okay? So before I preach this morning, we're going to, real quick, Frank, could you stand up for me, please, sir?
Yes, sir.
All right. Dennis, could you stand up for me, please, sir? Jim, could you stand up for me? Ryan, could you stand up for me? So we're going to start with Frank, then we're going to get Dennis, and I'll end it up. I want every man in here, every one of these brothers that are standing up, I want you to tell the congregation one positive thing about your father. Not positive about you, but about your kids, but one thing about your father that's positive.
I would say that the fun of the child I had, that I enjoyed it, and taught me a lot of things in play and fun.
To have fun.
Yeah, so everybody enjoyed certain things that most people don't indulge in.
Right.
Water skiing, water sports, and things like that.
Okay. All right, Jim.
That's a line that you got up every day, no matter what, went to work. Still be a work ethic.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Dennis.
There's many things that my dad did for me. It's hard to pick out just one instance. So I'd have to say the general upbringing, right from wrong.
Amen.
And stand tall.
Amen. Amen. Ryan.
My dad was a lot of fun. I guess you could say he instilled in me a good work ethic, because regardless of what happened, he went to work every day. And he instilled in me discipline, as far as you didn't put up with lying, cheating, stealing. You work for what you get. And that's kind of mostly what I remember about him, is that you work for what you get and you don't take what somebody else has, because it doesn't belong to you.
Amen.
Yeah.
So everybody has something positive they can say about their father. Now, if I went around the room and asked the ladies to do the same thing, I'm sure you could say something positive about your father. My positive thing about my dad, there's a couple different things about my father that really stood out. One in particular is my daddy always was a provider. I don't remember in my whole life ever remember my daddy laying in the bed and being sick and not getting him going to work. Now, I know in my upbringing, somewhere along the way, he was sick and didn't feel like going. But Daddy got up every day and went to work. Every day, rain, sleet, snow. My daddy went to work every day, and we always had something to eat.
Yeah.
Okay? It might not have been steak, but we always had something to eat. And the other thing that a strength that I drew from my father is my father has an ability not to care about what people think. My daddy don't believe something to be right. Everybody, this church could be full of people from wall to wall, from that wall to that wall and that wall to that wall. If he gonna stand on something, it don't move him at all if you disagree with him. He ain't bothered by it, he ain't moved by it, his feelings ain't hurt. He'll tell you, he'll look you in the face and tell you straight up, I'm not gonna do it. And everybody can be against him. Everybody can hate him, can spread stuff on him, can talk about him. He ain't gonna move the size of a mosquito's toenail to please anybody. And when I was young, I didn't understand that. I used to say to myself, and just go along with the punch. Make things easy on the family and everybody. But the older I get, I understand that principle. If you get a habit of bending and buckling for people, you'll be like a rabbit. You ever seen a rabbit when a bush shakes? What they do, they go on there. They run from everything. Sometimes you need to put your foot in concrete and stand up. I remember Bishop Johnson had a thing he used to tell us as young men in the church. He used to say, don't let nobody tell you everything to do. He said, sometimes use your own mind. He said, never let somebody do all the thinking for you. He said, because if you ever get like that, people will think and you will do everything they want you to do, and you won't be nothing but a hoe. Because your mind, you won't even use your own mind. They'll tell you your head itching, and you'll be there scratching your head. And your head ain't even itching, but they told you it's itching. So because of that, you need to scratch it. Fathers, we play a vital role in our children's lives. You realize that? We play, and I'm going to show you today in the scripture, a young man who went through a lot. And when he finally got back to his family, the first thing this young man wanted to know is my daddy living.
Yeah.
It's something about a young man, he love his mama, he'll give his mama the blood out of his vein, but every young man wants to please their daddy.
Yeah.
Every young man wants to please, they want the approval of daddy. Okay, they want daddy to say, I'm proud of him. I remember when I went off to school, I remember I came home and my mom had I think she was driving a Maxima at that time. And my dad was putting a starter on the Maxima. And I was out there up under the car helping him. And I never forget, one of the things my daddy told me, he said, I'm dependent on you to make something out of yourself. He said, I'm dependent on you to graduate from college. I'm dependent on you to make something out of yourself. And I don't care how tough it got in school, that one little 15-second conversation when he said that stuck in my mind. And I don't care, whenever I felt like giving up, I would say to myself, Daddy said he depended on me. He's dependent on me to make it. You'll be surprised sometimes the small things, fathers, we can say to our kids, and we don't think it's much, but years later, it's still in their mind. And that was over 20-some years ago, but I remember distinctively my daddy under that car saying, Trez, I'm dependent on you to make it. Okay? That's why it means something to tell your kids when they do good.
Yeah.
It means something, okay? Sometimes we beat them down so much, but it means something sometimes to tell your kid, look here, I'm in your corner. Regardless of how many times you fail, you can always get up and come home because I'm still in your corner. Okay? Never ever, I don't care how bad it is, give up on your children. Because God didn't give up on us. He's the perfect example of a good father. Do you realize that? No matter how bad we get, he's right there to help us out. So let's look at what here in Genesis. I'm just going to read a few verses here, then I'm going to read a few verses in 1 Kings. Here in Genesis, the 45th chapter, talking about Joseph, it says, Then Joseph could not refrain himself before all them that stood by him. And he cried, and caused every man to go out from me. And there stood no man with him, while Joseph made himself known unto his brother. And he wept aloud, and the Egyptians in the house of Pharaoh heard. And Joseph said unto his brethren, I am Joseph, do my father yet live? I'm Joseph. The first thing he asked his brother, and after all that time, remember now, he was put in a pit, he was put in prison, all this stuff happened to him, but as soon as he saw his brothers, the first thing he did after he cried was he said, his daddy lived. That young man wanted his daddy, he wanted to know, is my daddy okay? Okay, and then let's look at verse number 9. Verse number 9, Joseph told him, he said, haste ye, and go up to my father, and say unto him, thus saith thy son Joseph, God hath made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down unto me, and tarry not, and thou shalt dwell in the land of Goshen, and thou shalt be near unto me, thou and thy children and thy children's children, and thy flocks and thy herds, and all that thou hast. And there will I nourish thee, for yet there are 5 years of famine. In other words, he's saying, go get my daddy, and tell daddy I'm the second ruler in all of Egypt. That young man wanted his daddy to know he made it. Do you understand that? He wanted his daddy to know, daddy, I ain't broke. Daddy, I got a few nickels to rub together. Daddy, I'm successful in what? It's amazing how a child is something about, especially young men, there's something about young men, they want the approval of their father. That is why Satan goes so hard and works so hard to tear up the family. So young men won't have that ability to be, I was talking to a guy on last night, and he told me that he was dealing with a weakness. And he said one of the reasons that helped shape him into the lifestyle that he has is his father left them when they were like 2 years old. He was like 2 years old, his father left him. So he grew up in a house with 5 sisters and a mom. So he said, everything I've seen as a child growing up was feminine. He said, my mom was a lady. My sisters are ladies. They're feminine. So he told me, he said, I can write down. He said, I can sew. He said, I can cook. He said, I know how to braid hair. He said, I can put a relaxer in a woman's hair and do it better than most beauticians can do. He said, everything that a daughter would naturally be able to do, he said, I probably could do it better than them. He said, I grew up in a house with 5 ladies. And because of some of that stuff, it helped shape his lifestyle into a weakness. Okay? And as I told him, I said, now, the situation that you found yourself in has nothing to do with you. You had nothing to do with your father leaving the house. You had nothing you can do about that. And your mother raised you to the ability that she could. Okay? She's a woman, so she did the best that she could in raising you. That's not your fault, and it's not your mother's fault. But what happened is Satan will use anything to tear us down. Okay? Satan used the femininity of his mother, the femininity of his sisters to produce a spirit in him. Okay? Now, and as a grown man now, he's confused because of what he said I grew up under. And I told him, I said, now let me explain something to you. By the power of Jesus Christ, that ain't nothing but a cloak. I said, because God can deliver you from everything in your life that is not right. I don't care how bad it is. I don't care who did it to you. I don't care if they meant to do it or didn't mean to do it. Sometimes stuff happens to us and it's meant to destroy our life. But thank God for Jesus, he's still able to wash us and clean us up. And all we have to do is accept his blood. And I look at that young man, and he cried, and he cried, and he cried, and he said, I want to be clean. I want to be changed. I want to be delivered. And I told him, I said, if you want it, God can do it for you. Forget your past. Forget what you have done. Forget what you've done in the past. Don't even let that bother you anymore. Drop it. Don't even worry about it, because guess what? You can't change the past. Can anybody here go back and change their past? Now let me ask you this. Is it anything in your past you would change?
Yes.
Yes. There is plenty of stuff in my past. If I could live life over, I would do it different. But guess what? I can't change it. And guess what Satan does? He uses your past to beat up your future. Oh, you did such and such. You know, your daddy will never look at you the same. You did such and such. Your daddy left you because he ain't wanted nothing to do with you. Your dad, this happened to you and that happened to you. All that stuff just to mess up our mind. But at the end of the day, thank God Jesus came and shed his blood, and I don't care what you're dealing with today, God can heal your heart. Okay? Some people have been put in some very adverse situations with their parents in their home life. Things they didn't ask for. Okay? Situations that the child have to live with it because of something the parent did or the grandparent did, and the child have to live with it, and these gossiping grown people don't make it no better. I'm serious. You ever seen something happen and grown people? I was talking to someone a couple weeks ago, and it was a guy, and him and his wife was having some issues, and his wife left, and she was gone for a while, you know, maybe a year, maybe 2 years, maybe a little longer than that. And through the process of time, he got caught up with someone else, and the other lady ended up having a baby for him. So it was just one thing after the other, and everybody was just yap. And I told them, I said, first of all, this is what y'all don't understand. At some point, that child gonna get grown. That child gonna grow up. And I said, sure as my head bald, some of y'all same saved people gonna go around and tell that child, you know how you got here? You know, your daddy was married, and your mom, and you know, and somebody, now you mark my word, somebody gonna tell that child something that the child had nothing to do with. And you know why they gonna tell him that? That's Satan's way of bridging a gap between him and his father and messing up their family relationship. I'm telling you, Satan is a slick fella. Very slick, okay? But at the end of the day, the little boy or the little child, the little girl has no bearings on how they come into this world. Y'all realize that? They don't have what they have to do with that. They don't have anything to do with that. So what Satan tries to do is tear up or tear down the father to the children. Okay? And women, y'all excuse me for a minute. You know, sometimes women help tear the father down to the children. You know your dad ain't no good. Your daddy won't work. To me, that is a very low person that tear down the man. Because guess what? If the daddy is so crazy and so terrible and so no good, and you laid down with him and had a baby, that don't make you smart either. It really don't. If the daddy is just does no good at something, and you had kids for him, you know you ain't that smart either. Right? You're not that smart. So at the end of the day, at the end of the day, you should build up instead of tearing down. Now, let's be truthful about it. Some men don't do what they're supposed to do as fathers. They don't work. They don't take care of the kids. They don't do nothing they're supposed to do. Okay? And that's pitiful on their part. Okay? But Jesus Christ gave us a good example of how a son should look to their dad. You remember when he went to the cross, Jesus prayed and he told his father, he said, Father, restore unto me the glory I had with you before the world was. In other words, he said, Daddy, give me back my authority. Give me my power back. I want to be back with you, Daddy. He loved his father so much he was willing to do everything his daddy sent him to do. But at the same time, a time came when he said, okay, Dad, I done suffered enough. I want to come back home. I want my glory back. Okay? Every young man and young woman looks at their father as the hero in their life, or they should. Okay? I guarantee you, we went right here and asked the women in here about their father. Some will have some, and I had to learn this, if you want to upset a lady, you better not talk about her dad. Now I'm telling you, You about to get in some trouble real quick if you talk about a young lady daddy. Okay? Because in her mind, man, daddy paid the bills, daddy protect the house, daddy kept things going. Okay? And in some instances, some men, and it's sad to say this, wasn't worth nothing as far as taking care of their family. But those kids still love them. Y'all seen situations like that? Sometimes the man, he ain't did nothing he was supposed to do. But at the end of the day, when them kids see him, that's daddy. There's something about them still love their father. Okay? That's why we have to be careful when we talk and when we deal with people, how we put down fathers in front of children. I'm telling you, because you never ever know how that child feel about their daddy. I'm telling you. Now, my daddy, I don't care what happened. I don't care how bad the situation is. I don't care what done happened. I might disagree with my daddy. But guess what? There's a certain line I'm going to go with, and there's a certain line I'm going to let you go with when it comes to my daddy. Just point blank. I done had people I done told, listen, now remember, that's my daddy. I don't care what you think about it. You can think the worst of it. At the end of the day, that's my daddy. And there's certain stuff I ain't going to let you say about my dad. Just like at the end of the day, I don't care what Ryan thinks about Frank. I don't care if Frank could have worked Ryan down there on the farm all day, plowing hay, doing whatever with that hay. Do you not know, at the end of the day, I don't care what somebody else say, man, Frank done worked Ryan and that son all day. That's Ryan daddy. Okay? So, when you gonna mess up at him, you go and talk so much trash about Frank, you know Ryan will put the evil eye on you. Ryan could disagree with Frank. Guess what? At the end of the day, he's going to say, that's my daddy. At the end of the day, that's my daddy. Regardless if you agree with him or don't agree with him, at the end of the day, that's my daddy. So every one of us in here, something in your father, you pulled from his genes. Maybe good, maybe bad, but you are not who you are if it wasn't for your father. Y'all realize that? I'm not who I am if it wasn't for my dad. You are not who you are if something in your genes you got from your dad and from your mother. Okay? So remember, Jesus Christ told us in the book of, I think it's St. Matthew, he said, well, the parable with the prodigal son, the prodigal son father was waiting on him to come back home. That's an example of a good father. He knew that boy had done went out and done some of everything. Okay? But he stood and waited for his son to come back home. And that's what God does for us because he's a good father. How many of y'all in here have done everything right since you've been saved? Don't stand up, Frank. We know you're perfect. But I'm talking about everybody else. Have done everything right. Anybody? No. I'm talking about since you've been saved, we've messed up.
Yes.
But guess what our good father did? Sat on his throne and said, you know what, my son, my daughter going to come back and repent. And when they come back, I want them to come back. I'm going to hug them and tell them I love them.
Amen.
That's what a good father does. A good father chasing his kids, he whoop them. God knows I got plenty of them. He whoop you, but guess what? They love you. They whoop you, but they love you. A good father whoop his kids. Now let me tell you, when you don't whoop your kids, everybody your children deal with gonna know you don't whoop them, or you haven't whooped them, or you haven't put some sort of discipline on them. Okay? I remember I couldn't understand what my dad used to say when me and my brother was small. He used to say, "I'm gonna whoop you now, so the chain gang won't whoop you." I used to be like, "What is the chain gang?" And when I ain't going to and I didn't understand until I got older and realized the chain gang was prison. And what he was saying is, I'm going to whoop you now to whoop prison out of it. I'm going to show you, I'm going to whoop you now. That way you can see you're going to listen to somebody in life. You don't have to live, but somebody going to make you listen. And when you, like he used to tell us, and if you go to prison, when you go to jail, he said they're going to tell you when to eat, when to sleep, and they're going to say lights out, and then there going to be no such lies. You're going to say, I don't want to watch some more TV. No, that's it. Lights going out when they say it. And I used to say to myself, why would you tell your children that? Why would you? But the older I get, the more it makes sense.
Yes.
He was trying to instill in us, if y'all don't learn to listen to somebody, they building places for people like y'all every day. And it's called a penitentiary. That's what he was trying to instill in us. You better learn to listen, because there in this life here, you gonna listen to somebody. Whether you listen by choice or not by choice, but I promise you, we will listen to someone. All right, last verse in this chapter. Verse 9 says, Haste ye and go up to my father, and say unto him, Thus saith thy son Joseph, God hath made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down unto me, tarry not, and thou shalt dwell in the land of Goshen, and thou shalt be near unto me, thou and thy children, and thy children's children, and thy flocks, and thy herds, and all that thou hast. And there will I nourish thee, for yet there are 5 years of a famine, lest thou and thy household and all that thou hast come to poverty. And behold, your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin that is in my mouth, that speaketh unto you. And ye shall tell my father of all my glory in Egypt. And you see what what Joseph telling his brothers, go back and tell daddy of how successful I am. This young man wanted his daddy to know that he made it. Okay? That's what young men, young women, they want their parents to be proud of them. Okay? They want their parents to be proud of them. And now a lot of times, and it's sad, but sometimes parents don't live to see what happens years and years later. Sometimes they go off the scenery and they die. I know a minister that told me, he said he was a heroin addict. And he rolled up his arm and he showed me his sleeves, and I mean his arm was marked up from, just all marked up. And he said all these marks come from needles, where I used to shoot up with heroin. And he said, now God saved me and delivered me off of heroin 30 years ago. He said, but I still got all the scars of what I used to be. And he said, my daddy actually died thinking that I would never ever get delivered from drugs. He said, my dad died he told me, he said, on his daddy's deathbed, his daddy told him, son, please leave that heroin alone. And he said he was so strung out at that time, what his daddy said didn't mean nothing to him. He said, so my daddy actually died believing that I was a junkie. He said, but daddy didn't see it happen, but one day God changed my heart. Now, ain't that a beautiful thing? Now, his daddy might have didn't ever see it, but it don't matter, because God still changed his heart. Okay? He said, my daddy died thinking I would never be better. But I thank God today, even when we feel like we are in a mess and we can't overcome the problem we're in, all we got to do is pray. Rely on God. Don't give up on God. God is still able to deliver us. Let's roll over to 2 Kings. I'm going to read 2 verses here and we're going to close. In 2 Kings, the 2nd chapter. 1 Kings, the 2nd chapter. And I'll begin reading at the first verse. It says, now the days of David drew nigh that he should die. And he charged Solomon his son, saying, I go the way of all the earth. Be thou strong, therefore, and show thyself a man. In other words, David told his son, act like a man. Okay, don't be right here like a little boy. You're going to be a king. Act like a man. I'm about to die now, son, but I need you to act like you are a king, like you're a man. Okay? Verse 3, and keep the charge of the Lord thy God, to walk in his ways, to keep his statutes, and his commandments, and his judgments, and his testimonies, as it is written in the law of Moses, that thou mayest prosper in all that thou doest, and whithersoever thou turnest thyself. Now that's some good advice to give your son.
Amen.
He said, keep God's commandments so you can prosper. Do what God wrote in his word and you will prosper. He didn't tell him, go get you a couple different ladies, go get you this, go get you that. He told his boy, keep God's commandments and you will prosper. So parents today, fathers, that's one thing we should teach our kids, to keep God's commandments. If we teach our kids to keep God's commandments, another scripture in the Bible says they will have great success. Okay? You keep God's commandments, you will have great success. Okay? You'll be successful. Isn't it a better thing Isn't it a good thing when you go to your kid's house, and I can only imagine this, and I haven't lived to get to this point yet, but isn't it good, I would guess it would be a good thing when you go to your kid's house and your kids have enough. They have money to put gas in the car. They have food on the table. They're able to pay the bills. They're able to keep the lights on in the house. Isn't that seem like it would be better than to go there and you got to give them a little food money to eat? You got to pay their bills. You got to do this. You got to do that. You want your children to be successful.
Yes.
And the reason and the way they can be successful is to do God's will, keep His commandments. Okay, that makes them successful. I know some people. This guy was telling me. He said, or the lady was telling me. She said, well, I said, well, why I was over at their house and the mom and dad just like had a room set up in the house, and I was like, oh, that's nice. Y'all got an area like a suite set up for your parents. But it was weird because if you didn't know no better, you would think it was the parents' house. Just the way everything was and the way they acted. And something just didn't sit right in my spirit. And I told Amanda, I said, you can believe this whenever you get ready. And I don't know nothing about these folks, but them folks, they're paying the bills. You know? She said, no, that's their children. I said, them people paying the bills. She said, why you say that? I said, because they act like they're too much at home. Them people paying the bills. Then later on, he said, oh yeah, well my husband stopped working. And so my dad didn't have to pay pay our bills and stuff. And I told somebody, I said, see, I don't blame that man. I wouldn't go there and ask him nothing either. I'd go there and go right in the refrigerator and eat. If I'm already paying all the bills, I'm home. I just go there and open the refrigerator and eat whatever they got in there because he already paying all the bills. See how that young man gave up his right to his in-laws to be the man of his own castle. He gave that right up because he can't pay the bills. Okay? If somebody else got to pay the bills, you've given up your right to be the king. Okay? Now that's cute for the person that ain't working. Oh, mom and dad didn't pay for it. I don't want that. I don't want when I come home, call the own shots at my own house because I want to pay my own bills. Okay? I don't want my daddy to have to come pay my bills because daddy might come there and I tell him something, he'll say, well, look, I pay the mortgage here, son. And then what can I say? All I can say, well, yeah, you're right, you do. But if I pay the mortgage, then there's a certain amount of say so I got in my house. Okay? A lot of times, men, we give up our right to be men because we won't get on a job and go to work. We give up our right to be men because we won't pay the bills. Okay? There are certain things we should do as men, and we should do it with pride. Okay? Taking care of your family is something that a man should be proud about doing. Okay? If I paid the bills in the house and I have gas to get to work and I got a few nickels left, that might not be ideal, but I am content. If them girls got food to eat and the lights on and the bills not been paid and I only got a few nickels left, Lord, I thank you. Thank you. It don't have to be a big surplus left, but long as because God promised to supply our what? Needs. So if I paid the bills and the needs have been met, now if I don't have money to go on a lavish vacation, that's all right. But as long as God has met my need, okay? Because I know y'all might not believe this, vacation is not a need. It's not a need. Now, it's something we need to do from time to time because you need to relax. I tell anybody, sometimes you need to leave from around your surroundings where you can go and relax. You need that. You need to let your hair down. Those of you that have, me and Frank, we can't let ours down. But some folks need to let their hair down and relax. Okay? Remember that. And if God supply your need, men, and we have enough to make it, let's tell God thank you.
Yeah.
Every month I have something I do. I do this every month faithfully. Whenever all the bills has been paid for the month, I always walk out in the yard and look up and tell God thank you. Whenever I know all the bills that month have been paid, I always walk out in the yard. I walk out in the front yard and I just say, Lord, I thank you. Live to fight another day. You got us through this month right here. Because guess what? Things can change overnight. You never know if you're going to have that money next month. So you should tell God, thank you for doing it this month, so God can know this person here is grateful for what they do for me, what I do for them. Same thing with us as fathers. We should live our life in front of our kids in a way that years after we're dead and gone, our kids look at us in a different light. They appreciate what we did. Now, I will say this, when you're younger and your daddy, some of your daddy ways just gets on your nerves. They just aggravate you to death when you're younger. But I've lived long enough now to see when you go to getting older, it makes so much sense why daddy was the way he was. When you have to start walking in daddy's shoes and doing things and being responsible for things, you realize daddy had a method for what he was trying to teach us. The whole time. He was trying to instill some stuff in us to make us better men. And a good father always wants his child to be better than him. Always want his child. My dad used to say that all the time. I want y'all to be better than me. He said, I want y'all to have more education than me. He said, I want y'all to go further in life than I went. He said, I went to this area right here, and I couldn't go no further in this area. But that don't mean y'all need to stop right here. Y'all go further. Okay? So in my conclusion, fathers, we get beat up a lot of times. We get punished a lot of times. But at the end of the day, we are the backbone of the family.
Yes.
We are the backbone of the family, okay? And Satan knows that. That's why he tears up the family, and usually it starts with the man. He don't want us to raise our kids because he knows, Satan knows, I'm going to say this and I'm going to close. If a man raises his daughter the right way, you know some of these jacklegs ain't going to be able to fool your daughter. When he gets started talking that crazy talk, she's going to say, oh, my daddy done told me about a man like you. She going to call his bluff to start with. When a man is really in the household, then that son is going to have a good backbone. He's going to love his wife. He's going to treat his wife good. He's going to make sure she's taken care of. And then he's going to turn right around and tell her, now, I ain't going to let you boss me, but I'm going to love you to death. A good man going to hold his ground and love his wife, but at the same time, he's going to have a backbone. Okay? A lady told me the other day, she said, when I married my husband, one of the reasons I married him is because I was able to control him. She said, I love the fact that he was tall and handsome, but I could control him. Whatever I told him to do, he did it. And she said, but what got me with that is after I married him, I realized every other woman could control him too. And before I caught myself, I said, good for you. I shouldn't have told her that, but before I caught myself, you ever had something slip out your mouth and then you can't grab it and pull it back? Before I caught myself, I said, good for you. That's what you get. Because you married him for the wrong purpose. You married him because you could control him. But at the end of the day, that controlling, you realize every other woman was able to do the same thing. Okay? So y'all remember, when Jesus Christ's whole purpose was to please his daddy. Okay? As Frank said, his daddy taught him, and y'all might not believe this, this is a good thing. His daddy taught him how to have fun, how to be a child. You know, sometimes we are so serious with our kids, we take away their childhood. It's a good thing to have a daddy that can play around and be a kid. Taught him to be a child. Now, is everything in Frank's father's life was perfect?
No.
Probably not. Is everything in my daddy's life perfect? No. But guess what? I love him for who he is. Because I can't be who I am if he wasn't who he was.
Amen.
It has a purpose.